Hey everybody, and welcome back to another lecture with Coding with Arobi. In this lecture, we're going to be enhancing our class book using fields from Pydantic. Now, a field is a way for us to add extra validation to each variable within book. For example, a small flaw in our application is if I open up our browser and we want to create a new book and click Try It Out, we can make the title completely empty. For example, I can make the author Coding with Roby. I can make the description an awesome book. However, title can still be submitted when it's literally not equal to any type of string. It's just an empty string. If we say execute, we can see that we get a successful 200 response with an empty title. If we come up to read all books and we try it out and execute, we're going to get our book back, but our title is going to be empty. So we want to add extra validation to these books that are getting submitted over the request body before we start manipulating any type of data. We can do this by importing field also from Pydantic. So right after base model, I'm going to say comma field. And now within title, I'm going to say equals field. And now inside field, there's a whole bunch of different objects we can call inside. There's alias, there's a title, there's description, const, we have greater than, less than, we have max characters or max length and minimal length. We have a whole bunch of different attributes we can add to create extra data validation attached to each one of these variables. For example, within field, I'm going to type in min_length. And I'm going to say min length is 1 character. So now moving forward, if we create a new book, the title has to be at least 1 character long. So if we save this application and we open up our browser and we refresh the page, and we're going to try it out for read all books, and it's going to be empty now because when we saved our file, our server reloaded. But if we scroll down to post now, we can see that everything's required. It doesn't look like anything has changed here. However, if we say try it out, and I make an empty string, and I'm just going to leave author as string and description as string, and I click execute, we get an error unprocessable entity. The message says ensure this value has at least 1 character, and that value error.anyString.minLength, and that limit value is equal to 1. And our location is our title, so our title needs at least 1 character to be successfully processed. Now, what is so awesome about FastAPI is FastAPI and Pydantic are doing all of this data validation without any extra coding effort from you. This is all embedded within everything that we're going to be using, that FastAPI and Pydantic are going to be allowing us to do data validation and data parsing without us having to do any work. So if we want to fix this error, we can come up here and just type in any character within this string and now execute. And now we can see that it successfully responds with the 200 status code, and that title is now equal to A. If we scroll to the top, and we now say read all books and execute, we now once again have a new book within our books list with a title of A. Now let's go ahead and add a field to our description. Now our description is going to have a field of a title, which is going to describe the book with a max length of 100 characters and a minimal length of 1 character. So I'm going to say field parentheses, and then I'm going to say title equals description of book, comma, max length equals 100, and I'm going to say comma, min length equals 1. And now if we save and go back to our application or back to our Swagger browser and we refresh the application, if we come back down to create book, our description now has extra validation attached to it. If we say try it out and we leave description to be empty, and we say execute, we are now going to get an unprocessable entity from description. If this was 100 characters long, we would also get an error, which is going to say ensure this value has under 100 characters because our max length within the field is 100 and our minimal length is only 1. But you may be asking yourself, how would you know these data validations even exist if you're working in the Swagger documentation? Well, remember, Swagger is a dynamic documentation for your APIs. It keeps track of all of this and it's completely fluent with Pydantic and FastAPI. So if we go back to our browser and we scroll up to close this post request, and we scroll down to schemas, we can see the validation errors, HTTP validation errors, and book. If we open up book, we can see that ID is of type UUID, title is a string with a minimal length of 1, author is a string, description is a description of the book right there, and if we remember that, that's because of the description of the book title we add right here in the field, with a max length of 100 and a min length of 1, and a rating which is an integer title of rating. Our HTTP validation error will just give us information on what our error details will look like if a HTTP validation error occurs. And same thing with validation error. It'll give us a schema of what our validation error will look like. And now lastly, let's do one more enhancement. Within our description, let's say we don't always need to have a description, and we just want it to be optional. If a user or a client wants to add a description to a book, they can, but if they don't want to, that is totally okay as well. We can do this the same way we are adding optionals within the query parameters. We do that by typing in optional and then wrapping string in brackets. However, we're going to have to import optional, import this name from typing.optional. And now we have our optional description, which works perfectly with our application. So if we resave our application and we jump back over to our browser and we refresh, and we want to create a new book, we can now say try it out and completely eliminate the description variable inside book. We can now say execute this command, and we'll get the response body of a status code 200 with the description of just being null, but it doesn't need to be fulfilled for any kind of requirement during the parsing of the application. If we scroll all the way back down to the schemas of book, we can now see description has the exact same items. It's no longer required within the book object that we're sending to the server. FastAPI works with Swagger and Pydantic to literally remove time from your development, but to still successfully be able to create rapid applications or fast applications. This wraps up how to use Field to create your books and base models to be more dynamic for data validation. And I will see you in the next video.